welcome back to Cooking with Jamie. Today I'm going to teach you how to make chicken parmesan, or chicken parm as we call it. So the first thing you need to do when you're making chicken parm is you need to make a tomato sauce or a marinara. I always make marinara at home because it's really easy to do. So to make your own marinara, it's really simple. I buy a can of whole peeled tomatoes, and I'll show you what to do with those in a second. And garlic and olive oil. And for the chicken parm, you're going to need flour, eggs, breadcrumbs, seasoned breadcrumbs, mozzarella cheese, Parmesan cheese, basil, and of course chicken. And when you get the chicken, you want to make sure it's it's the thin chicken breast. It's not like the chunky one that we use for like salsa chicken. So sometimes it'll say, thin or, I don't know, pounded down. If it's not, you can also pound it down yourself. You just cover it with a paper towel, and then you can use like one of those mallets that people use for like pastries and thin it out. You just want it thin so that it'll cook all the way through. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the tomato sauce. So I'm going to take my garlic and I'm just going to chop it. It does not need to be neat as usual. We're just chopping. And like I said, you want your hand as close to the top as possible and your other hand on top, and you just chop across like this. Just kind of keep tucking it in and then chopping again. Tuck it in, chop it. And it's kind of sticking to my knife, which is good because in a second I can just transfer it right over that way. So I'm going to chop. Okay, and now I'm ready to transfer it. So I'll take these over. I'm just going to put this in the pot. It's not hot yet. Take the rest. Bring it over. And then I'm going to add olive oil. And I'm going to turn it on. If you watched my shrimp scampi video, I mentioned that burning garlic is gross. So you don't need to like really brown this. As soon as you can smell it, it's time to throw something in. As soon as you can smell the garlic cooking. And you can see I've got some cutlets going already. I'm going to show you in a second how to make these. I'm just going to turn these over. No, it's not ready yet. Okay, so really quickly while that just heats up, I'm going to tell you a trick for the chicken parm. So my friend Nancy taught me this, and it's always stuck in my head. Anytime you're breading anything, chicken, fish, anything, the formula is dry, wet, dry. So the dry could be seasoned breadcrumbs, which we're using today. The wet can be olive oil, whatever you want it to be. But for chicken parm, the first dry is white flour. The wet is a beaten egg. You beat the egg, and then the last dry is the breadcrumbs. So you go dry, wet, dry for each one. That little formula will help you remember the recipe. So it's time to add the tomatoes to the tomato sauce, and this is how I do it. So this could be sharp, be careful. I take my hand and I put it in here, and I hold all the tomatoes so that they won't fall out, and then I pour the juice on top of the garlic and olive oil. Now that's going to start cooking. Then this comes the fun part. Now I'm going to put my hand in here and I'm going to hand crush them. And the reason I do it in here is that they squirt everywhere. So if you can contain the squirting to the jar. These tomatoes were in the refrigerator, so they're really cold, but it's okay. They'll taste good. So I'm just hand crushing all the tomatoes. We really like to have like chunky tomatoes in our marinara. If you don't like that, then don't hand crush them as much. So now that I've crushed all of them, now I can pour them in on top of all of this. And then I'm just going to really quickly season it with salt and pepper. And look, we have new shakers. So here's the pepper. Here's the salt. And give it a quick stir. I'm going to try not to set the spoon on fire this time. And then I'm just covering this, and I'm just leaving it. So now onto the chicken, and let me see if these guys need to flip. This guy needs to flip. I know this is kind of going out of order because I've got these in the frying pan already, but you're getting a little sneak peek because one of the most important things when you're frying these cutlets is to make sure there's more than enough olive oil. If the olive oil gets too dirty or with like crumbs from the breading, or if the olive oil starts to run out, it gets all like kind of burned and charred. All right, so now I'm gonna show you how to make those cutlets. So like I said before, the formula is dry, wet, dry. Just in case you're still learning the way to beat an egg, you crack it and then like this with a fork and you're done. So dry, wet, dry. First comes the flour. Totally coated. This flour will make the egg stick. So then you coat it in eggs. And the eggs will make the breadcrumbs stick. And then you coat it in the breadcrumbs. So the better the breadcrumbs, the better it's gonna taste. So I have a couple of little tips for this. The first tip is make sure they're seasoned breadcrumbs. The second is that like really generic 4C brand are actually really delicious. So you can always buy those, just get the seasoned ones, and they're always really good. You can buy them even at the corner store, they're awesome. If you want fancier breadcrumbs, you can go to an Italian market. If you're heading out east, you could always go to Del Fiore and Patchogue. They have the best breadcrumbs anywhere, but these came from Citarella. So you can always get fancy ones, but honestly, those 4C ones are good. So now that I've done flour, milk, and the breadcrumbs, now I can throw this guy in the frying pan. So while those guys are going, I'm gonna take some of my basil, not a ton, a few leaves, just a few leaves, maybe not even this many. And I'm gonna add them to my sauce just by breaking them into pieces. This is all you need for sauce. I know people talk about using like tomato paste and all that stuff. You don't need tomato paste. You just need tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, and some basil. That's the way to do it. And it's really good and really easy. You'll never buy jarred tomato sauce again. So this guy's gonna boil. These guys are frying, and I actually have two that are already done. So now that the cutlets are fried, it takes about 10 minutes for them to fry on each side. I'm gonna take them off and just lay them onto the cookie sheet. They're nice and hot. And my tomato sauce is just about ready too. So I'm gonna bring the tomato sauce around. If I was using this tomato sauce for pasta tonight, I probably would let it cook a little longer just so it wouldn't be so chunky, but it's actually better to be chunky for the chicken parm. So this also cooks on like medium to high for like 10 minutes, maybe 15. And you kind of can't screw it up. If you cook it for too short, it's still good. Too long, it's still good. So just gonna stir it up. See how liquidy it is? If I had let it cook a little longer, it might be like a little bit saucier, but I wanna show you how to use the tomatoes for the cutlets, so we're just gonna do it now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a slotted spoon, but this one's sort of like perforated. That way I'm just grabbing the tomatoes, and I'm gonna put some tomatoes on top of each cutlet. Just like this. And you can see the basil's right in there and the garlic's right in there. It's like all together. I'm a big fan of like making sauces and then using the sauces because you kind of get everything cooked together. I do the same thing for my lasagna. I don't use meat. I make a really good meat sauce and then I use that for the lasagna, and I'll teach you that another time. Here we go. So now that there's tomato on each cutlet, now I'm going to put mozzarella, and this is pre-shredded. If you want to be fancy, you could get like a really fancy mozzarella and you could slice it. At the end of the day, it's chicken parm. Doesn't really need to be fancy, but the better the ingredients, you know, the better it tastes. So that's your call. So I'm gonna just put mozzarella on, and the mozzarella's already melting, which is delicious. Put the mozzarella. And then I'm gonna put some Parmesan. Yeah, sometimes I use Pecorino Romano. It's sort of just similar to Parmesan, but it has a different flavor. So you can do that as well. And then this is a pizza trick. If you ever make your own pizza, something that can really affect the flavors if you drizzle olive oil on it before you put it in the oven. So we're gonna do the same with this. You're just gonna drizzle some olive oil on top. Not a ton, because it's obviously, you don't want it to be too soupy. And then we're gonna bake these for maybe 10 minutes at 350, and they're done. That's it, that's all you need to do. So I'm gonna throw them in the oven, and then I'll show you the finished product. So after the cutlets have been in the oven for about 10 minutes at 350, it's time to take them out. You can tell that they're done because the cheese is all melted, but also they were mostly cooked through when we put them in. So a lot of people will serve the chicken parm with pasta. We don't really feel it's necessary to serve it with pasta because it's already breaded. So we'll probably just have it either with a caprese salad or some roasted asparagus, and we'll just eat it just like this. So of course you could make it into a sandwich, but that might be a lot. Just put it on the plate, and then you put your salad and your vegetables on the side, and you're ready to go. Thanks.